Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for attending. I'd just like to throw out a very warm welcome this morning to all those members of the Australian Border Force who have joined us. Please put up your hand if you're from the... No, nobody? All right, okay. You call me a spy. I'm going to talk with you this morning as an advocate, not as an activist. So please excuse me if I don't jump up and down and scream and shout and wave my fists in the air, but I think factual knowledge and facts and the truth of the matter is more important than that just at the moment. So I'm going to talk about the Nauru files, and then I'm going to talk about the closure of Manus Island and the prospect of a royal commission. In April this year, I met with Guardian Australia reporters Ben Doherty and David Marr in Sydney, and I handed over to them a 2,000-page dossier. And this contained every incident report from Manus Island and Nauru for the period of time that I worked there, from July 2014 to July 2015. And these leaked documents pertain to all of the actions of Wilson Security, Transfield Services and Save the Children during that time on both of those islands. I'm happy to say that they were joined by another 2,100 reports from Save the Children only in recent weeks. And we now have what is an 8,000-page cache of damning evidence against the Australian government, which we call the Nauru files. So let's just look at what these files say. The incident reports that you read about have been alleged by Minister Dutton to be unsubstantiated allegations from people with a political bias. In order to refute this, you have to know how an incident report becomes an incident report, and then you can judge for yourself. So here's the deal on incident reports. Let's take an example of a Wilson Security incident report. It has 4 categories. One is an information report, and then it escalates to minor, major, and critical incident reports. When an officer intervenes in an altercation on Nauru, for example, that officer will write up a handwritten template on that incident. It actually happened, and they've written it up. It then goes to a central processing office on Nauru, where a processing officer turns it into a typed incident report, categorises it, and sends it on to Melbourne. In the case of a critical incident report, that report has to be in Transfield Services in Melbourne within 3 hours of having occurred on Nauru. And so 3 hours is the timeliness in which that critical incident has to arrive at Transfield's head office, because Wilson Security have a contract with Transfield Services, and they will receive an $80,000 abatement if that report is not on the desk in 3 hours. That's an $80,000 financial penalty for being untimely. Now you can see that an incident report firstly has to pass through 3 sets of hands. It cannot be unsubstantiated. It will not be stamped as an incident report unless it actually happened. It has to be accurate, and it has to be timely, and it has to fit the criteria for the minor, major and critical status. And so I'm going to assert to you now that in order to avoid financial penalties, these incident reports are downgraded. They are significantly downgraded to buy more time, because nobody wants to pay an $80,000 abatement fee just for being 5 or 10 minutes late. When Minister Dutton stands up and says that these are unsubstantiated allegations, then that is wrong. They are real. They wouldn't be an incident report unless they were real. When he says they're minor, it's because they've been officially downgraded to buy more time to avoid financial penalty. Now that's the truth. And so we have to refute these assertions by Minister Dutton, and to be able to say to him, we will not accept that you can say that these are minor and unsubstantiated. What I've done just in the last week is I've bundled up my reports, my files, and I've sent them off to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. I have alleged that the Australian government has engaged in crimes against humanity, growing every day as more and more people come out with their experiences. Many of the files are duplicated, of course, because they're coming from multiple sources. But that only stands to consolidate them, to point out that they are even more authentic because of the number of people who come forward. And so anybody that's here this morning that's worked on Nauru or Manus Island, and I met up with some of you already this morning, I encourage you to stand up and say something. There are too many of us now for the Australian Border Force to arrest. The closure of Manus Island. This is not new. You'll remember that it was first mooted in April this year, that something has happened between then and now. We had a federal election. And both sides of government did their utmost to divert the Australian media away from offshore detention. You'll remember that during the election we were talking about negative gearing, superannuation, all of those kinds of things. Neither the government nor the opposition had any intentions of changing the detention system, the detention regime. And so they kept it off the agenda, they gagged the media, they had the media thrown around them. Since I first published my cache of records in June, I have had 3 and 4 interviews with international media every day. Every day. I've been invited to talk with the ABC on News Breakfast, to have the program pulled, or the segment pulled at the last minute while I'm in the studio. I've been invited to appear on the Today Show, to have that pulled the night before. I've been invited to speak on Radio National, and I've got through a couple of times, but a couple of those interviews have also been cancelled while I'm in the studio. There's something going on about Australian media. I'm very pleased to support the Guardian Australia, because it has stood up to the plate and it's reported everything. And if you're wondering what you can do to help, and bear in mind this is not an endorsement, I don't work for them, but if you want to do anything to help, support the Guardian. It is the Guardian. The issue of the closure of Manus Island is an insidious one, because while it has to close, because the PNG government are the owners of the land on which it stands, there is no place to allocate a safe haven for the 854 men who are still there. There is talk of sending them to Lae. Well, I've worked in Lae, behind razor wire and armoured vehicles for transport, and in a place where no person really is safe, particularly a visitor or a stranger. There is the option of the East Lorengau Resettlement Centre, some 40 kilometres from the Lobron Naval Base where the detention centre is now housed. But none of the refugees, except, well, there was one who was prepared to go there because the security is in charge, the charge of the mobile squads. The mobile squads are known as the machete men, and they are notorious for deaths in custody. And so it's not safe for people to go to the East Lorengau Resettlement Centre, and it's not safe for them to go to Lae. And it's not legal to send them to Nauru, although Nauru will claim that it has capacity for them, and it does, because a number of people have become refugees in the community there. But it's not legal for Australia to traffic in people, just like it's not legal for the people smugglers. Minister Dutton would have you believe that he has the authority to do that, when clearly he does not. There are 100 compassionate families for every one of those transferees on Manus Island who will accommodate them here in Australia. We have had five state premiers who have opened their doors should people be allowed to be accommodated in their states. That's 5 state premiers who have agreed that people can come here. We have the facilities here to integrate people back into our community. And Australia has a very good track record of this. Between 1976 and 1981, we took in 56,000 Indo-Chinese. After the Vietnam War, we took in 74,000 Vietnamese. After the Second World War, we took in hundreds of thousands of European refugees. We've done this before, and we've done it very well. And why we now say that we cannot accommodate fewer than 2,000 people into our country, to me has no justification at all. Australia spends $5 billion a year to keep fewer than 2,000 people out of our country. Shame! That's your money, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we're talking about a budget crisis. This is in the order of a state education budget or a state health budget. That's one of the first places we could look to save a few pennies. Finally, and I will close on this, finally the prospect of a Royal Commission. The thing to think about in terms of a Royal Commission is that it can only be held into Australia's activities in our own country. Minister Dutton hides behind the assertion that the Nauru and Manus Island detention centres are the authority of the Nauruan and Papua New Guinea governments. Minister Dutton asserts that it is their detention regime, not ours. He hides behind the technical legal loophole that a Royal Commission cannot be engaged upon with regard to a foreign country's activities. But I've spoken to my legal counsel during the week, and I've been informed that won't quite cut it in terms of avoiding it, because Australia does stand to account for the abuse of power in having sent them there. And this is the object, I think, or the focus that we should engage upon with regard to the Royal Commission. I encourage it to happen. It's way overdue. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll just close by saying I think we've tipped the balance, and I think we've made some traction, and I think they will come here.